bus route did not go directly to Maple Street. Instead, it let out a whole street earlier, which meant Megan was about a half a block from her apartment building when the world went quiet. The silence had fallen subtly, with the perpetual noises of the city night being subtracted one by one. Now, on the vacant sidewalk next to the empty street, the falling rain made the only sounds. No cars or buses or subways provided background roar. No sirens or horns or burglar alarms or gunshots rang out. There was just the white noise hiss and patter of the rain, as constant and chaotic as television static. Megan shuffled to a halt, unable to find the strength to walk under the weight of the silence.
Hello?
Nothing.
Hello?
She repeated, louder this time. She prayed for someone to answer, even with shouted abuse. No answer came. Megan pulled her raincoat close and hugged herself. The damp chill in the air suddenly felt bone deep. A shift in some filth lodged in a sewer drain made a splash, and Megan jerked around to face it fast enough for her heel to kick up a fan of water from the puddle at her feet.
Hello?
Back the way she'd been facing, a whistling fast descent ended in a massive crash in a nearby alleyway. A trash can and assorted debris tumbled out into the street, propelled by a gust of multi-hued smoke. Megan turned back around too fast and slipped off her feet, sitting down hard in a shallow puddle. She could feel the aftershocks of the blast through her palms as she pushed herself standing again. Her ears were ringing, but the silence had already returned. No car alarms had been set off. No day shift workers were shouting from their windows. Nothing. Not even a stray cat.
Hello? Anybody?
Megan wiped her hands on her jeans and then slipped her right hand into her coat pocket. She squeezed the black plastic rectangle there and felt its reassuring heft. She squeezed the thing harder when the rain-accented stillness was broken again, this time by the sound of something moving in the alley. Megan walked forward with a dreamer's gait, tugged toward the impact site by some intangible yet unbreakable pull. She held her breath as she turned to look into the alley. The whatever it was had cratered the asphalt, scarred the walls, and scattered trash in all directions. The closest streetlight had lost its bulb, the narrow space infested with shadows. Megan stared into the darkness, trying to pick out any detail she could. She swallowed hard and willed her voice to stop quavering.
Is someone there?
There was movement in the alley. Something low to the ground shifted and turned.
It's dog. A car hit a big stray dog and drove away.
Despite the plausible notion, Megan drew the device from her coat pocket. She slowly stepped closer, still in the grip of nightmare-logic curiosity. When Megan got within 3 paces of the thing, it jerked up onto all fours and raised its head. Huge eyes, the color of raw liver, caught what little light reached them. The eyes widened, and the dog surged forward. With the click of a switch, the stun gun pumped 3 million volts through the no-doubt rabid dog. Harsh, crackling blue light brightened the alley like a camera flash, casting everything into stark relief for an instant.
Ouch!
Said the creature.
What the hey?
It wasn't a dog. Megan's world lurched. She stumbled backward, letting her weapon drop.
No.
She was gasping for breath. Her lungs refused to fill.
It can't be.
She felt icy adrenaline soak her veins.
It can't be.
Black smoke seeped into the edges of her vision. Her pupils were pinpricks.
It can't.
Megan's knees gave out. The pavement rushed up to meet her. The creature trotted out of the alley and looked down at the fallen being who had just slapped a lightning bolt into her hide.
It's okay.
Rainbow Dash nudged Megan onto her stomach with her hooves and slipped her front legs under the human's arms.
I didn't think you were real either.
Careful now, Lyra. The spell feels a little slippery at first.
Twilight Sparkle magically held the balloon's basket up against a low-hanging cloud. The mint-green unicorn stepped onto the cloud with caution, and then fell into her mare friend's waiting embrace.
I was so worried
Bon Bon whimpered into Lyra's streaked mane.
when I couldn't find you. I thought...
Me too, Lyra replied with a choked sob. But I'm here now, and you're okay. We're going to be okay, Bonnie. Princess Twilight is going to fix everything. A tiny smile creased Twilight's mouth, but it didn't last long. She turned away with a flap of her wings and looked around. The evening skies were full of clouds. Pegasi had brought dozens of them, and most were full of huddled refugees. Other towns-ponies had fled north by hoof or ridden the awful tide to higher ground in makeshift rafts and boats. But not nearly enough had made it. Twilight's horn was burning hot from directing the balloon and enchanting the rescued unicorns and earth ponies' hooves. She welcomed the distraction the pain brought. Nearby, Cupcake still sat in the balloon's basket, cradling her babies and softly weeping. Her husband crouched next to her, one front leg draped over her shoulders. His eyes were no drier.
Piggy. Piggy pie. Oh, Piggy pie.
Twilight flew closer and magicked heated air into the balloon, leaving the cloud behind and resuming the search for ponies untouched by the slime. Her expression grew hard from the inner pressure of her grief when she looked down at the mournful couple. Next to the cakes, Spike peered through a pair of binoculars resting on the edge of the basket.
Anything?
They were nearing the southern edge of town now. Spike peered down at the schoolhouse through the slowly deepening gloom. Like the home that had split and doused poor Rarity, the place had been filled to bursting. The roof had ruptured, and slime covered the building like frosting on a gingerbread house. Spike caught only a glimpse of the full-sized bumps in the purple-covered yard before jerking the binoculars away.
It got the school,
he said, hollowly. Twilight squeezed her eyes shut and slowly nodded. For lack of anything else to say, Spike returned to his surveying. Spike's view focused further south on a discarded Stetson sitting near a lump in the surface of the slime. Not far from there, he could see the farmhouse's sludge-filled windows. With a shift of the focus dial, row upon row of soaked and drooping trees came into sight as well. Spike gulped.
Sweet Apple Acres. It's
Applejack too, then.
Twilight's horn flared, and the balloon rose higher. She tightened her lips against the quiver building in them.
And
Her voice cracked. She took a shaky breath, forcing herself through the motions of the calming technique Princess Cadence had taught her.
breathe in, hold, and out. And the cottage?
In Spike's magnified view of Fluttershy's rustic home, a small team of Pegasi were struggling to evacuate the animals off the roof. Angel Bunny kicked and screamed in Thunderlane's grasp, flailing his legs toward the edge of a pale yellow hoof sticking out of the purple muck below. Spike lowered the binoculars. They slipped from his slackened grasp and fell to the basket's wicker floor. He turned to face Twilight. His wide, watery eyes spoke for him.
It got them all.
Twilight hung her head. Her horn's light went out.
Dash, where are you?
Just then, down below, her eyes settled on a small pool of colors in the dark, glistening expanse. She pointed a hoof.
Spike! Spike, look!
The balloon had drifted to the edge of town proper, and a small wooden shack peeked out from the slime coating of the ground like an island in a dark sea. 4 fillies were huddled on its roof, quivering in fear.
Girls, up here!
Mama, we're down here! Over here! We're over here! Help us! Please help us! Miss Twilight! Miss Twilight!
At the Cutie Mark Crusaders Clubhouse, Apple Bloom, Scootaloo, Sweetie Belle, and their classmate Silver Spoon perked up at the sound of Twilight's voice. Twilight swooped down to hover a short distance above the group.
Are you all okay?
The Crusaders all nodded. Apple Bloom's customary bow was missing. In its place, a small tiara partly held back her loose crimson mane. Silver Spoon pointed a shaking, slate-gray hoof downward.
Diamond Tiara's still down there! She pushed me in ahead of her! Please, get her out, please!
Twilight turned and spotted a small lump in the slime. Apple Bloom's ribbon was visible atop it, like a garnish on a pudding. Twilight winced.
I don't know if I can right now, Silver Spoon. That stuff is very dangerous to touch. I still need to figure out how to...
Please!
Silver Spoon shuddered. Tears filled her eyes. Twilight's gaze passed from her to her fallen friend and back again.
All right, I'll try.
She flapped over to Diamond Tiara's prone form and ignited her horn. An aura of magic surrounded the little earth pony. She jerked and tensed and let out a strangled cry as the slime covering her suddenly thickened and expanded. The closest eyes turned to focus on Twilight, and tendrils of the stuff lashed out at her. Twilight drew back in shock and flapped out of the slime's reach. The fillies on the clubhouse roof gasped.
What the hey? What happened, Miss Twilight?
Twilight hung her head.
I'm sorry. It's feeding on the magic somehow. I can't lift her.
Silver Spoon sagged. Twilight flew back up and then dropped a rope from the balloon's basket.
Wrap up in this. I'll pull you up.
The fillies wound the rope around themselves. Twilight gripped its upper third with magic and slowly pulled the little ponies up to the balloon. At the same time, Spike dropped ballast sacks one after another. The sandbags made wet splatters as they struck the slime below. The ponies tumbled into the basket, all wide eyes and tiny mouths.
I'm so sorry, Twilight. This is all her fault.
Cried Apple Bloom before any pony could speak.
We didn't know.
Agreed Sweetie Belle.
It was their idea.
Scootaloo pointed an accusing hoof at Silver Spoon. As her only retort, the little grey earth pony winced, hiccuped, and then burst into tears. Forgetting her mourning over Pinkie Pie for a moment, Cupcake frowned and shifted to face the fillies.
Now what in Celestia's name are you all talking about?
Apple Bloom brushed a forelock out of her eyes.
We were having a game of dares, and Diamond Tiara dared me to let her wear my ribbon. And then Apple Bloom dared Diamond to let her wear her tiara.
Added Scootaloo.
And then
Apple Bloom struggled to push out the words.
Diamond Tiara dared us all to play hooky after lunch.
Sweetie Belle cringed.
Miss Cheerilee said there'd be trouble if we ever skipped school, but we thought she meant detention or something. We didn't know she'd meant we'd bring a slime monster down on the whole town.
Scootaloo reared up against Mrs. Cake.
We didn't know. We didn't think it would be this bad. You gotta believe us. We thought the worst that happened is getting in trouble with our folks. We never meant for this to happen, honest. Diamond!
Silver Spoon fell on her side, curling into a ball.
Diamond!
She hid her face with her hooves, her eyeglasses all askew.
Please say there's something we can do to fix this.
We'll do anything. We promise.
We'll even go up searching for our cutie marks forever if he'll reverse what we did. Diamond! I'm sorry!
Girls, I don't think...
Please! 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 Please!
That's enough. All of you, get a hold of yourselves right this minute.
The Cake twins fussed and fidgeted against their mother at the sound of the filly's cries. Cupcake put on her sternest face and spoke in the firm, commanding, yet non-threatening tone that only mothers could muster.
What happened today was not your fault.
The four fillies froze in mid-upset, staring up at Mrs. Cake in shock and awe.
Whatever caused this was...
She paused to keep her voice steady.
Whatever caused this was a lot worse than some misbehaving foals. This is evil, plain and simple, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with sweet, good-hearted, wonderful little girls like you. Understand?
Despite her best efforts, Mrs. Cake's voice had cracked, and fresh tears shone in her eyes. She held her babies close. Apple Bloom, Scootaloo, Sweetie Belle, and Silver Spoon silently crept forward and leaned against Mrs. Cake, taking comfort in her motherly presence. After a short pause, Spike joined them. Mr. Cake stroked his wife's back with a hoof and sniffled back tears.
Well said, honey.
A moment later, worry creased Sweetie Belle's features, and she looked up at Twilight.
Twilight? What about my mom and dad and Rarity? Are they okay? Yeah, Applejack and Granny Smith and Big Macintosh and Sweet Apple Acres all right? Are my aunts okay? They live on the other side of town. That's far enough away from the school that the slime couldn't reach them, right? Right? And Rainbow Dash is fine, I'll bet. She's too awesome for something like this to slow her down.
Silver Spoon adjusted her glasses to look up at Twilight imploringly.
Please tell me him.
Silver Spoon, Scootaloo, your families are safe and Rainbow Dash is away getting help. Sweetie Belle, your parents have been airlifted and are on their way to Canterlot. But your sister...
Twilight bit her lower lip, struggling to find proper words.
It all happened too fast. Rarity didn't get away in time. And Apple Bloom, the farm, is...
Twilight took a shaky breath, but it escaped in a choked squeak before she could complete her calming routine.
I'm so sorry.
Sweetie Belle's eyes widened further still.
Rarity?
Her lip quivered. Softly, she began to cry. Apple Bloom hung her head. Her loose mane half hid her face.
But we were supposed to look after each other. All together. Oh!
Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Scootaloo reached out and pulled Sweetie Belle into a hug. Silver Spoon made the same offer to Apple Bloom, who only hesitated for a moment before giving in. The pain in the fillies' faces and the sounds of their tiny sobs cut through Twilight like dragon fangs through crystal. She turned to face the group.
I'll help them.
Her oath sounded meek and desperate in her ears, but she pressed on.
I'll help Pinky, and Rarity, and the Apples, and Fluttershy, Ponyville, and Dodge, and Appaloosa. I will save them all. I will, I promise. I won't rest until I find a way to stop this.
Mrs. Cake looked up at Twilight and smiled.
We know, dearie. We believe in you.
There was more than goodwill in that wearied, pained, damp-eyed smile. For the first time in her life, Twilight was looking down at a face, looking up at her in faith. The same look of utter, awe-tinged trust she'd seen on the crowds at the summer sun celebration all those years ago, when she'd first laid eyes on Princess Celestia. All at once, as she flapped along next to the balloon and guided it toward Canterlot, Twilight felt very, very alone.
Oh, misty eye of the mountain below. Keep careful watch of my brother's soul. And should the sky be filled with fire and smoke, keep watching over during the sun. This is to end in fire, and we shall all burn together. Watch the flames climb high into the night, calling out, Father, oh, stand by and we will watch the flames burn over all the mountainside. And if we should die tonight,
Princess Celestia stood on the upper landing of the stairs into Canterlot Castle. She peered down at the palace's expansive courtyard, her gaze easily piercing the gloom as she watched the ongoing trickle of fleeing refugees arrive. She narrowed her eyes.
You were there, in Cloudsdale. Why didn't you call out the Wonderbolts right away? Why didn't you raise the alarm?
Princess Luna stood behind her in the open doorway, out of reach of the light from the two enchanted lanterns flanking the massive arch.
I did all that was necessary, sister. The Megan will come, and our troubles will be over. Why raise a panic?
Ponies are suffering, Luna!
Celestia whirled around to face her sister.
We could have helped. We could have started the evacuation sooner.
Nay, sister. You know harmony, but I know fear. This is no mere parasprite swarm or a heavy rainstorm. There is little more they could have done. The populace would have filled their extra time with worry, and that worry would have bloomed into chaos or stagnated into carelessness. Better it came suddenly and forced them into action with less time to ponder.
There's no way to know that for certain.
Celestia frowned.
You know more about all this than you're saying. I can tell.
Luna backed away, deeper into the shadows. Her turquoise eyes shone in the dark.
I know nothing of how to end this, sister. If there was anything I could do, I promise you I would do it.
Celestia stared into her sister's eyes for a silent moment that seemed to stretch on for centuries. But then her expression softened.
You don't have to be afraid of me, Luna. You know that, don't you?
Her tone was gentle, but faintly pleading.
I do. I'm not.
Luna shifted uneasily.
I must go raise the moon.
She turned and fled, her shod hooves loudly ringing off the polished stone floor. Celestia inhaled to speak, to call her sister back, but then let out the breath in a soft sigh. She trotted back into the castle.